Colin Wright, activists claiming that therapy designed to understand the source of gender-related distress and potentially alleviate it without body modification is a form of conversion therapy. He says this is an absolutely sinister rhetorical move. It absolutely is 100%. They just will not give up. It's incredible. It really is cult-like. It really is cult-like, especially now that the science that we're discovering through things like the WPATH files, the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. There was a link to Michael Schellenberger with thousands of internal files and internal Zoom meetings. I made a video about that. You can check that out on my channel. Subscribe now. But you go through that and you can see it's all pseudoscience. I mean, to any objective observer from the start, it's obviously all been pseudoscience and made up, all in the service of giving sex changes to kids for some reason. I mean, it's just, I never thought I would live to see the day, but things get weird slowly and then they get weird and dysfunctional really, really fast, don't they? So we have, what they're freaking out about right now is this CAS report out of the NHS in England. NHS review. UK children with mental health problems may have been rushed into transition. This has been obvious to anybody who's been paying attention or looking at it with anything like a critical eye. When you've got children, teenagers, going in for 1-2 meetings with a so-called professional and they're walking away with puberty blockers, that sounds like being rushed into something to me. But this report has come out, and this is following on the heels of Sweden doing similar things, and the Netherlands is also doing similar things now. There are other countries coming out. There's been a report from the Mayo Clinic. All of this, as well as with the WPATH files coming out, the whole rotten edifice is just crumbling and falling over right now. And it's being finally exposed to the public that this was all just bullshit. This was all just ideological fanaticism. None of this was based on science. When the Endocrine Society and when the American Medical Association and groups like that, like the NHS in England or in Canada, the medical professional organizations, when they were saying that this is all based on the best knowledge, they were appealing to the authority of WPATH, World Professional Association of Transgender Health. This has all been exposed as total pseudoscience. Now, nobody was doing their due diligence. It's actually probably the greatest medical scandal in history. Maybe lobotomies were the bigger or on the same par, but it's certainly shocking. And it was only a matter of time until this all started to fall apart. Thank God. Not that you would know that in Canada right now. Canada's still going ahead, full bore ahead, and there's reasons for that, and I'll show those to you soon. But going back to this tweet here, activists claiming that therapy designed to understand the source of gender-related distress and potentially alleviate it without body modification is a form of conversion therapy. That's an absolutely sinister rhetorical move. So they won't give up. These are fanatics, right? These are absolute fanatics. And let's go to the article that's linked here. Campaigners, therapy for gender questioning people could be deemed conversion therapy. So now they're saying that it is truly astonishing that like therapists and counselors or psychiatrists, if they alleviate somebody's gender dysphoria where they don't have to be permanently medicalized or have parts of their body chopped off or go on cross-sex hormones, right? So they just get through it without having to do that and become comfortable in their own bodies. The loonies are calling that conversion therapy, which is utter and total madness. In fact, I think sinister is a good word for it. It's absolutely sinister. This is from people who just don't give a fuck. They know what they want and they don't care who it hurts. The activist plan is to call responsible medical care conversion therapy. Therapists may be afraid not to affirm the identity of people who believe they are transgender if proposals to ban so-called conversion therapy go ahead. Campaigners have raised concerns that the recommendations in the CAS review into treatment for gender-confused children may not be implemented if psychotherapists fear any attempt to dissuade people they are transgender could be deemed conversion therapy. So this sounds crazy, right? So I'll reread this again. Campaigners have raised concerns that the recommendations in the CAS review, this is the review that was done in England by the NHS, into treatment for gender confused children may not be implemented if psychotherapists fear any attempt to dissuade people they are transgender could be deemed conversion therapy. That sounds crazy, right? That sounds crazy because it seems like one might suggest anyway that so-called gender affirming care is the real conversion therapy. And not just like therapy either. I mean, we're talking surgery, we're talking chemicals. Now, they are trying to chemically and surgically change male bodies to female and vice versa. That sounds like real conversion therapy to me. They're trying to convert males into females or something like a female or some facsimile of a female, and females into males or some facsimile of a male or some stereotype of what a male is, but not actually either of them, right? Doesn't that feel like actual conversion therapy? Like they are actually trying to convert people into something they could never actually be. Now, as long as we're talking about conversion therapy, there's one case actually where there's a Canadian. I just did a story on this. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. You can see all my wonderful videos. Very healthy. But there's a Canadian who's been suing the province of Ontario, because he wants them to fund him to get a neo-vagina, but keep the Franken beans as well. And they said, yeah, we don't really want to do that. It's experimental, and we don't know how to do that. So he sued, and he actually just won. And now Ontario has to send him to Texas and pay for him to have it done in Texas. So he wants a neo-vagina, plus he wants to keep the beans in Frank. And I can't help but think it's going to get maybe just a little bit crowded down there, right? I guess it's taint or bust. If you want everything. Personally, I think that it's going to be hard to find anybody who's going to want to fuck any of it. I can't help but think that, because most people don't like gross. Now, you may think this is ridiculous, saying that being a fear that, psychotherapists fear that any attempt to dissuade people that they need to be permanently medicalized and be castrated and have their breasts cut off and just be permanently medicalized for life and have their bodies changed in irreversible ways, may think that sounds crazy. That conversion therapy, that sounds like what they're actually doing is the conversion therapy. Well, let me introduce you to Bill C4 from, you guessed it, Justin Trudeau's Canada. This is one of Justin Trudeau's bills. Bill C4. This is the anti-conversion therapy bill. And guess what it says in here? Bill C4 would amend the criminal code, and this is law now, right? So this has been enacted. Bill C4 would amend the criminal code to prohibit certain activities that relate to conversion therapy, which is defined as a practice, treatment, or service designed to change a person's sexual orientation to heterosexual. Now, it's only, by the way, in all this, it's only to heterosexual. Anything else is fine. You can convert anybody anywhere else, doesn't matter. You can have apparently exorcisms to change them into anything else. But anyway, change a person's gender to cisgender. Again, I never agreed to this whole cisgender thing, by the way. Nobody asked me. Change a person's gender expression so that it conforms to the sex assigned to the person at birth. This is actual legislation in Canada. It's just gibberish. Repress or reduce non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior. Repress a person's non-cisgender identity, or repress or reduce a person's gender expression that does not conform to the sex assigned to the person at birth. So in Canada, it's actually illegal to say, maybe you're not. Maybe you're not. Maybe this 10-year-old isn't actually born in the wrong body. Let's look at some other things. Maybe there's some other underlying causes. In Canada, that's actually prohibited. That is called conversion therapy. Conversion therapy. Saying that, well, maybe there's a way that we don't have to destroy their body permanently for life. That's considered conversion therapy. Saying, I don't know, it doesn't seem very ethical to do this. It doesn't seem like a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old can possibly consent to something like this. They can't possibly understand the long-term consequences of this. Maybe they'll change their mind about whether or not they want to have kids in the future, for instance. They don't know what it's like to live in an adult body. Maybe that's insanely unethical. Maybe that's only something that fucking monsters would do. And psychopaths. In Canada, that's illegal. That's illegal because of the conversion therapy bill, which, I mean, is just a euphemism if you've ever seen one. Trudeau's Canada. This is one that Pierre Poilievre, when he becomes prime minister, I hope, it looks certain it's going to happen late 2025, but this is going to be one of the bills. There's so much legislation that's going to have to be thrown out. The internet censorship bills, there's a ton. Anyway, this is how crazy it is in Canada. This is how crazy it can get in pretty much any country if you let the loonies run the asylum. The campaign group Transgender Trend said it broadly welcomed the cast review as it has long called for a therapeutic approach for gender questioning people, but echoes concerns that professionals could find themselves accused of practicing conversion therapy for challenging someone's identity. Yeah, I mean, it is truly insane. Let's see. Dr. Cass revealed in her landmark report, an independent 4-year review into NHS gender services released on Wednesday, that some of her team's investigations were thwarted by a lack of cooperation from the adult gender services. See, the problem is that when you start digging in, you realize they have no idea what they're doing. They're making it all up as they go along. It's all pseudoscience. It's not real. It's just all based on woke assertions, based on nothing, based on abstract ideas about this redefinition of gender, this, in some ways, just very trivial redefinition of gender. I mean, trivial in the sense that it's silly. It doesn't make any sense. Anything that includes frog gender and omnigender obviously isn't real. Omnigender, all of the genders, apparently there's an infinite number of them. Right? That's clearly just made up. She added it was clear that the young people who are most at risk from unevidenced experimental practices and medication are overwhelmingly lesbian, gay, or bisexual, and that socially transitioning children makes it more likely they will be propelled towards a medical pathway. Again, and this is the other, if you're talking about conversion therapy, they're taking people who would just grow up into gay or lesbians, most of them, not all of them, but a good percentage, like 70%, who would just grow up into being gays or lesbians, and trying to convert them to the other sex then to make them straight. I mean, the irony is incredible. It would almost be hilarious if it weren't so tragic what they're doing to young people's lives. Quote, it's clear that unregulated private clinics are profiting from dysfunctional NHS provision to monetize the distress of children and the desperation of their parents. Yes, they tell the parents that the kids will kill themselves if they don't transition them. Again, it seems really unethical, doesn't it? I mean, I would say criminally unethical. We support the best practice, not private practice, and urge the government to crack down on unethical private clinics which refuse to follow NHS guidance. So private clinics that are just, perhaps just becoming, puberty blocker mills just for anybody. These are the kids that are getting a half-hour consultation and straight on the puberty blockers they go. Puberty blockers are no longer allowed to be prescribed to under 16s on the NHS unless the child is taking part in a medical trial. With one such trial expected to be up and running by the end of the year, but trials for things like precocious puberty, right, where they start too early, and they'll stop it just briefly, and then they will go through a normal puberty. Let's see. It was made clear in the report that puberty blockers are not a pause. They are a fast track towards cross-sex hormones. Yeah, that puberty they lose while they're on those, that's gone. That's gone forever. That development of their body is gone forever. The lie is that, you take them, it pauses it, and then it starts back up again. Yeah, but you don't get the whole puberty back. That's a lie. Jay Lefebvre says young gay children, particularly effeminate boys and masculine girls, are being pressured into falsely identifying as transgender, thereby transing away the gay. Yeah, it like tomboys who are not going to grow up to be gay, but they just like playing with boys' toys or whatever, right? There are teachers in the elementary schools right now who will latch onto that in a second and start trying to convince them they're trans. That is happening. It's bizarre, isn't it? I mean, that is the real conversion therapy. See, Bad Seat says it all leads back to prescription dollars. Yep, permanent medicalization for life.